I didn't expect the evening to feel any different from the countless ones before it. The room hummed with casual chatter, the clink of glasses, and the soft shuffle of people moving from one corner to another. I had been asked to help with some arrangements, nothing more than setting up chairs, carrying boxes, making myself useful. That's when I first noticed her. She carried herself in a way that was impossible to miss. Not loud, not demanding attention, but commanding it all the same. Her steps were unhurried, her posture graceful. A woman in her early 40s, maybe mid, with a presence that made people naturally adjust around her. She wasn't trying to look younger, and she didn't need to. There was something magnetic in her confidence, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are. At one point, as I tried to squeeze past her with a stack of folded chairs, she turned, her eyes catching mine. They were warm, sharp, and amused all at once. She tilted her head slightly, as though she had already figured me out before I had said a single word. Then she spoke. "Are you going to behave?" The words were playful, yet they carried an edge, as if she had already sensed the restless energy in me, the way I didn't quite fit into the quiet, orderly rhythm of the evening. My lips curved before I even thought about it. Probably not. I hadn't meant it as bold as it sounded, but the answer slipped out, honest and unfiltered. Her smile deepened, just a fraction, but enough to make my chest tighten. She shook her head slowly, as if indulging me, but her gaze stayed longer than it should have. I set the chairs down, pretending to busy myself, though I was aware of every detail. The faint trace of her perfume drifting as she moved past, the subtle brush of her sleeve when the space narrowed between us, the steadiness of her presence. She didn't feel like someone I had just met. She felt like a story already in motion, and I had just stepped into it. Later, when I glanced across the room, I caught her watching me again. Not intently, not in a way anyone else would notice, but enough that I felt it. A glance that lingered just a heartbeat too long before she looked away. And in that moment, I realized her teasing question wasn't just small talk. It was a test, a doorway she had left slightly open. I couldn't explain why, but I knew this wasn't going to be one of those fleeting encounters that slipped away by the next day. Something had shifted the second I answered her. Probably not. 2 words, but they carried the weight of what was coming. The next few days, I kept catching myself replaying that first exchange in my head. Her voice teasing, my answer reckless, and the smile she tried to hide afterward. It was nothing, I told myself, just a passing moment. And yet, when I walked into the hall again and saw her, it felt as though the air itself shifted. She was already there, sleeves rolled up, arranging papers on a table. Not the type to stand around giving orders. She worked with her hands, quietly efficient. I offered to help, half expecting her to brush me off. Instead, she slid a stack of envelopes toward me. "Since you're probably not going to behave," she said lightly, "you can at least make yourself useful." Her eyes lifted to meet mine, and there it was again. That flicker of challenge, softened by something I couldn't quite name. I grinned, settling into the chair beside her. What started as simple tasks stretched into something else. We found a rhythm, passing papers back and forth, trading small jokes, slipping into conversation that flowed more easily than I'd expected. She spoke with clarity and ease, her words carrying the weight of experience, but she listened too, really listened, as though even my casual stories held something worth keeping. When our hands brushed while reaching for the same folder, it was barely a second, but enough to set a current through me. She didn't pull away immediately, just let the contact linger a heartbeat too long before continuing. My pulse quickened, though outwardly I tried to stay composed. At one point she laughed. A genuine, unguarded laugh that filled the space warmer than the sunlight spilling through the windows. I watched her face soften, her eyes crinkling at the edges, and felt a strange tightness in my chest. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply was, and that was more captivating than anything I'd known in people my own age. Later, When she reached over to squeeze my shoulder in thanks for carrying another box, I felt the weight of her touch settle deeper than it should have. Just a friendly gesture, nothing more. But I caught myself memorizing the warmth of her palm, the way her fingers pressed gently before slipping away. We worked in quiet after that, but the silence wasn't empty. It was thick with something unsaid, an awareness neither of us wanted to name yet. When I looked up, she was studying me again, her expression unreadable, as if debating whether to keep me at arm's length or let me a little closer. It struck me then, what began as playful teasing was slowly shifting into something else. A bond forming in the spaces between tasks, in the stolen glances, in the quiet laughter we shared when no one else was paying attention. I hadn't planned it, neither had she, but there it was, growing quietly and undeniably. It was late when the last of the chatter faded from the hall. Most people had gone home, leaving behind half-empty cups and the faint scent of coffee in the air. I stayed behind to stack chairs, partly out of duty, partly because she was still there. She moved slowly now, not with her usual efficiency, as if exhaustion was weighing heavier than the papers she gathered into neat piles. "Long day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her head lifted, and for the first time I noticed how tired her eyes looked. Still beautiful, still sharp, but softened with something more vulnerable. She gave a small shrug. "Long week. Long month. Take your pick." I set the last chair in place and leaned against it. Something told me she wasn't the kind of woman who often admitted to being worn down. She carried herself like she could handle anything. Seeing that mask slip, even a little, pulled me closer. "Want to sit for a while?" I offered. "The chairs are at least good for that." Her laugh was quiet, almost reluctant, but she sank into the seat across from me. For a moment, silence stretched between us, filled with nothing but the hum of a flickering light above. Then she spoke. "You know what's funny?" she said, eyes fixed on the table instead of me. "People look at me and think I've got it all figured out, like I never stumble, never doubt. Truth is, sometimes it feels like I'm just pretending not to be tired of holding everything together." I didn't rush to respond. I let the weight of her words settle. When she finally glanced up, I held her gaze. "You don't have to pretend with me," I said simply. Something shifted in her expression. A flicker of surprise, then softness, then hesitation. She leaned back slightly, folding her arms as though protecting herself, but not pulling away entirely. "You say that like it's easy," she murmured. "Not easy," I admitted. "Just real. And sometimes that's better than easy." Her lips parted, as if she wanted to argue, but instead she let out a slow breath. For the first time, she looked less like the composed woman everyone admired and more like someone quietly carrying too much. Without thinking, I reached across the table, resting my hand lightly over hers. Her fingers were cool, her skin soft, and though she tensed at first, she didn't move. Instead, she let her hands stay beneath mine, her thumb shifting slightly against my palm. It wasn't much, just a touch, nothing anyone else would notice. But in that moment it felt like a promise. Not of grand declarations or impossible dreams, just of being there, listening, sharing the weight she'd carried alone. We sat like that for a while, no need for more words. And when she finally pulled her hand back, she did it slowly, her eyes lingering on mine with a quiet tenderness that said more than she was ready to admit. That night, I realized something had changed. The playful teasing between us had given way to something deeper, a trust that had quietly taken root, drawing us into a place neither of us had expected to go. After that night, something shifted between us. It wasn't announced, and it wasn't obvious to anyone else, but I felt it every time our paths crossed. A glance held too long, a pause before either of us spoke, a subtle awareness that neither of us could shake. One afternoon, we ended up working side by side again. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of a fan in the corner, pushing warm air around. She leaned over the table, showing me how she wanted the documents arranged. Her voice was steady, practical, but I couldn't help noticing the faint scent of her perfume, or the way a few loose strands of her hair had slipped free from the clip at the back of her head. "You're not paying attention," she said suddenly, though her tone wasn't sharp, more amused than anything. I forced my eyes back to the papers. "I am. Just processing." "Processing?" she repeated with a knowing smile. She reached across me to slide a sheet into place, her arm brushing mine. It was nothing accidental, ordinary, but the warmth of that small contact sent a pulse through me I couldn't disguise. She noticed. I could tell by the way her movements slowed, the way her eyes flicked up to meet mine before darting away. A silence followed, heavier than before, filled with the unspoken. We carried on working, but the rhythm had changed. Every movement felt charged, every brush of her hand against mine a little too deliberate, every glance a little too weighted. At one point, I leaned in to read a note she'd scribbled on the margin of a page, and she leaned closer too, until our shoulders pressed lightly together. Neither of us moved away. "You're impossible," she whispered, half laughing, half breathless. "Probably," I murmured back, my voice lower than I intended. The words hung between us, neither of us daring to push further. Instead, she pulled back just enough to create space, though her hand lingered on the edge of the paper we both touched, her fingers brushing mine as if caught between letting go and holding on. I saw it in her eyes then, the conflict. She wanted to step back, to remind herself of the years between us, of what people might say. But there was something else too, something she couldn't quite hide. The same pull I felt, the same ache of wanting and not wanting all at once. For the rest of the afternoon, we worked with that invisible thread stretched taut between us. No one else would have noticed, but I carried every detail with me. The sound of her laugh softening when it was just the two of us, the warmth of her presence so close it blurred the line between accident and intention, the way she said my name like it belonged to her mouth alone. By the time we packed up, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just teasing anymore. This was something neither of us could ignore, no matter how hard we tried. The evening had wound down, the last of the chatter fading into the night air as people drifted home. A sudden power outage left the hall in shadows, only the faint glow of streetlights slipping through the windows. Someone had found a box of old candles, placing them along the tables until the room flickered with warm, uneven light. She was still there, sorting through a few things while others muttered about the blackout. I lingered, half out of duty, half because I wasn't ready to leave her side. The candlelight painted her features differently, softer, almost unreal, as if time itself had slowed to make space for her. "You don't have to stay," she said, her voice low. "I know," I replied, "but I want to." Her eyes lifted to mine, and for a long moment she just held my gaze. It wasn't the usual playful challenge I'd come to expect from her. It was heavier, more uncertain, as though she was weighing something she hadn't wanted to admit before. I moved closer, offering to help gather the last stack of papers. Our hands brushed in the dim light, and this time neither of us pulled away. Her fingers lingered against mine, hesitant but unwilling to break contact. "Are you going to behave?" she asked softly. The words were the same as that first night, but now they carried a tremor, a vulnerability beneath the teasing. I let out a breath, a quiet laugh that came out more like a sigh. "Do you want me to?" The question hung there, suspended between us. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer, the edge of her arm brushing against my sleeve, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. My pulse quickened, though I stayed still, waiting, letting her decide. She reached up as if to tuck her hair behind her ear, but her hand faltered halfway, resting instead on my forearm. The contact was light, almost cautious, yet it sent a rush through me that left my chest tight. I wanted to close the space between us, but something in her eyes stopped me. Not rejection, not fear, just the weight of everything unspoken. The years between us, the unrelenting eyes of others, the risk of stepping into something neither of us could take back. So instead of pulling her closer, I simply shifted, letting her hands stay on my arm while I offered her the steadiness of my chest. Slowly, carefully, she leaned into me, her head resting just beneath my collarbone. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, tentative at first, then firmer when she didn't pull away. The hall was silent except for the faint flicker of candle flames. Her cheek rested against me, warm and still. I felt the steady rhythm of her breathing, the quiet surrender in the way she allowed herself to stay there. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The moment said everything. Not yet a step across the line, but close enough to know the line was there, waiting. And as I held her, I realized something that both terrified and thrilled me. I didn't want to behave, not with her. The next few days felt strangely empty. I still went about the same routines, still saw the same faces, but her absence was a weight I carried with me. She wasn't avoiding me entirely. She was still present at the gatherings, still polite, but the warmth between us had cooled, replaced by a careful distance that stung more than I wanted to admit. I noticed it in the small ways. Where her hand once lingered against mine, now it retreated quickly. Where her laughter once spilled easily in my direction, now it came softer, guarded. She didn't look at me the way she had that night in the candlelight. Or maybe she did, but only when she thought I wouldn't notice. I told myself not to push. If she needed space, I would give it. But the silence between us was louder than words. One evening, after everyone had left, I caught a glimpse of her standing by the window, phone in hand. The glow lit her face as she typed something, paused, deleted, typed again. Her brows drew together in quiet frustration. Before I could make a sound, she noticed me. Her posture straightened instantly, the phone sliding into her pocket. "You're still here?" she asked, her voice steady, but I heard the undercurrent of unease. "Yeah," I said gently. "Thought I'd help lock up." She nodded but didn't meet my eyes. The silence stretched. I wanted to ask what she had been writing, what thoughts kept her awake at night, what fears held her back. Instead, I said nothing. I just let the quiet sit between us, though inside it was tearing at me. That night at home, I found myself tracing the memory of her touch, the way her hand had rested on my arm, the way her head had leaned against my chest. My fingers curled against my palm as if trying to hold onto what wasn't there. And somewhere across town, I imagined her doing the same. Sitting in her room, staring at her phone, debating whether to reach out, whether to admit she missed me. I pictured her thumb hovering over the screen, typing words only to erase them before they could become real. The age gap wasn't just a number between us anymore. It had become a wall she couldn't stop seeing, a shadow looming over every stolen glance, every unspoken thought. She was worried about what others would say, about what it would mean if she let herself want what she clearly did. And me? I was caught between patience and ache. I didn't want to push her, didn't want to make her feel trapped, but every day without her closeness felt like something vital was missing. The truth settled heavy in my chest. We were both caught in the same storm. She was doubting, retreating. I was waiting, hoping. And somewhere between us, a choice was forming. One that would change everything, depending on whether she had the courage to take it. It happened on a quiet evening, the kind that didn't announce itself as special until much later. I was helping put away the last of the equipment, the hall dim and empty except for the echo of my footsteps. I hadn't expected to see her. Truthfully, I thought she might keep her distance for good. But then the door opened, and there she was. She stepped inside slowly, as though unsure if she had the right to be there. Her coat was draped loosely around her shoulders, her hair falling in soft waves that framed her face. She looked different, not less beautiful but less guarded, vulnerable, like she had laid down some invisible armor before walking through the door. For a moment, neither of us spoke. My heart raced, unsure if she was here to say goodbye or something else entirely. Finally, she exhaled a shaky breath. "I've been avoiding you." I set the box in my hands aside, nodding quietly. I noticed. Her lips curved, though faintly, almost bitter at herself. I thought it would be easier, that if I stepped back, I could make this go away. She hesitated, her voice dropping softer. But it didn't. "I can't stop thinking about you." The weight of her confession filled the room, heavy and freeing all at once. I didn't move closer right away. I wanted her to choose this, not feel pulled into it. "I'm not blind to the reality," she continued, her eyes glistening in the low light. "You're younger. People will talk. Maybe I'll regret this, maybe you will too. But—" She stopped, her voice trembling before steadying again. "But I don't want to pretend anymore." I swallowed hard, the ache of all the nights without her pressing against the relief of finally hearing the words I had hoped for. She stepped toward me then, closing the distance she had been so careful to keep. Her hand reached for mine, tentative, as though she wasn't sure I'd take it. I did, without hesitation, my fingers weaving through hers naturally, like they belonged there all along. Her thumb brushed lightly across my knuckles, a small, nervous gesture that felt more intimate than anything we had shared before. "Are you going to behave?" she asked softly, her voice carrying that familiar teasing note. But this time, it was wrapped in vulnerability. I couldn't help but smile, a quiet laugh escaping as I met her eyes. "Probably not." But instead of shaking her head or pulling away, she laughed too. A real, unguarded laugh that melted the tension between us. She squeezed my hand, holding it tighter, as if choosing to anchor herself in this moment. There were no grand declarations, no promises of forever. Just two people standing in the quiet, choosing to let go of fear. Her hand in mine, her smile soft and real, the steady rhythm of her breathing close enough for me to feel. And in that small, steady moment, I knew it wasn't about behaving or not behaving. It was about finally letting ourselves be honest, and seeing where that honesty would lead.